During the last year, I've noticed a proliferation in these all-in-one emulator devices. The thing that struck me most about these, though, is the fact that they openly claim to include thousands of classic games. Now, distributing ROMs of commercial games has always been a bit of an under-the-counter type of activity, and Nintendo are especially active in pursuing anyone caught distributing their old games. So the thing that's really weird about these consoles is that you don't have to get one from some dodgy geezer that your mate knows. No, you can order one for next day delivery from Amazon, and it's sent to you from their fulfillment centres. So I was wondering, why are Amazon selling these? Have they not noticed what's on their advert on their own website? And how come Nintendo didn't notice either that Amazon are selling consoles full of their old games? But then again, I thought, well, maybe it's full of kind of public domain ROMs and a load of rubbish. And maybe it doesn't even have 3,000 ROMs on it. There's only one way to really find out, and that's to buy one for myself. The first thing I noticed is that unlike the similar-looking Neo Geo Mini, this will run off a rechargeable battery. And next to the battery slot, there's a single speaker there on the bottom. On the back, two USB ports for joypads, an analog AV out, a micro SD card that you can put additional ROMs on, a USB Mini B port for charging, and an on-off switch. And there's also a volume wheel on the side. The console has a 4.3-inch 16:9 ratio screen. In the box you get the instructions, an AV out cable, a USB lead and the two joypads. Now below the screen are a start and a select button, and the L and R buttons are included in the 6-button layout that's next to the springy and not clicky joystick. The 4:3 aspect ratio games are automatically squashed to fill that 16:9 screen, and you can't change that, but the screen itself is quite sharp and clear. And yes, they have included proper Nintendo ROMs. To get a better look at those, I've plugged the AV lead into the television and I'm capturing the output, and notice that the video output, when it's shown on a TV, is in the correct 4:3 aspect ratio. Now the video quality is quite soft, it's of course just coming out through composite, and if we scroll through this list of Super Nintendo ROMs, it shows that there are a total of 496 on here. I decided I should open the machine up just to see how those ROMs were being stored. Now this involves just taking off the rubber feet. I only really needed to take off the front 4 because there are just the 4 screws underneath those. The last 2 don't have any in. The 2 halves of the case come apart easily, and once you're inside you can see it's a very simple and a neat construction. Everything is being run from this one purpose-built board at the back, and looking at that, peeling away this piece of black tape reveals an unbranded 16GB Class 10 micro SD card. So I popped that into the computer, and sure enough to their word, there are 3,000 games on there. Well, just a few more in fact. Now, of course, as well as the Nintendo properties, there's games from the Sega Mega Drive. In fact, there's more Mega Drive games than there are SNES games. There's some arcade games at the top there from the Capcom system, the arcade system. There's 48 of those, so mostly sort of Street Fighter games and things. Don't really work too well, though. At the bottom, other 3 games, Great Giana Sisters, Doom and Hexen, so computer ports. But yeah, it mostly seems to focus on the Nintendo properties as far as the overall percentage of the ROMs go. The vast majority of them are for Nintendo's game systems. The ROMs are in an unusual order. Each one has a number, so of course they're in numerical order. However, the numbers seem to have been allocated without any rhyme or reason. For example, number 1 on the Super Nintendo list is Mega Man X, but number 7 is Donkey Kong Country. It makes it a little bit difficult to find certain titles, so I did a quick text search just to look for some familiar names, and it revealed that there was no Mario titles in there. Now, if that's in an attempt to appease Nintendo, I doubt it would be successful, as there are still plenty of first-party Nintendo titles included. Now, if you're wondering how well the games play, it's a bit of a mixed bag. While they can be played, the emulation hardware seems underpowered to me. Of course, there's no support for any of the Super FX type games, but it just feels on the normal ones like the games are running a little bit slow, a little bit jerky, stuttery. There are frames being dropped. It's especially noticeable during scrolling, and there's a little bit of tearing on the screen at times. Now, the inbuilt joystick does have a large dead zone in the centre, so sudden changes of direction are out of the question, and therefore some games are near impossible to play. So the external joypads are by far and away the best way to control the games. However, one anomaly is that the A and B buttons are swapped around between the console layout and that on the joypads. I did also find it quite difficult, if not near impossible, to do any of the rotational moves in Street Fighter 2, so no fireballs for me. Oh, and some games have severely messed up audio. Now, I haven't tried all the games, but I noticed that there's a few Japanese language titles in here, and this VR fighter versus Taken 2, I was really hoping that Liam Neeson would be turning up, but it's just some terrible fighter that I think is supposed to be Virtua Fighter versus Tekken. I suppose the whole experience is really a case of never mind the quality, feel the width. But I mean, some games are quite playable, but I'd rather be playing them in a manner that really did them justice rather than through this blurry composite TV output. So just to reiterate, I'm not recommending anyone gets one of these. They'll find no affiliated links to this. I just bought it to see if Amazon really were sending out Nintendo ROMs, and it turns out that they are. I'm sure there's a few people wondering why I'm going on so much about Nintendo when there's loads of Sega ROMs on this device as well. Well, I'm quite sure that Sega and Capcom and all the other companies whose ROMs are on here aren't happy about it. It's just that Nintendo are the company that actively pursue these things and are quite litigious about it. And I'm sure they wouldn't be happy knowing that Amazon are selling a machine that contains loads of their back catalogue. Of course, I'm not really letting the cat out of the bag. Everyone knows these things exist, and you can buy them from China and places even if Amazon don't sell them. It's just if Amazon advertised it in this way, I think maybe it would have flagged up a little bit more that this was a product that shouldn't really be distributed from their own warehouses. Wanted to make a video about it. Hope you found it interesting. I'm not recommending this product. Playing video games on a little squashed 4.3-inch 16:9 screen or over a blurry composite output isn't the best way to go. If you really wanted to play your retro games, obviously there's those official consoles. You could load those up with additional ROMs if you had them. You've got Raspberry Pi options, all that kind of stuff. So if people are thinking, oh, you've spoilt it now by revealing there's a micro SD card inside this thing, I don't think it's something that people weren't aware of, and people who like to play emulated retro games, they've got better ways to do it than this. So I don't think I'm spoiling anything here. I wouldn't recommend spending £70 on this. I don't think it's a very good product. But I just thought it was an interesting idea that I can go and buy ROMs from Amazon, get them sent prime from their warehouse, delivered next day delivery. And yeah, all those ROM sites are getting shut down. Thought it was worth mentioning. Just a silly little video. Hope you've enjoyed it. That's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.